A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans. Brothers and sisters, I ask then, has God rejected his people? Of course not. For I too am a child of Israel, a descendant of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not rejected his people, whom he foreknew. Do you not know what the scripture says about Elijah, how he pleads with God against Israel? Hence I ask, did they stumble so as to fall? Of course not. But through their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles, so as to make them jealous. Now if their transgression is enrichment for the world, and if their diminished number is enrichment for the Gentiles, how much more their full number? I do not want you to be unaware of this mystery, brothers and sisters, so that you will not become wise in your own estimation. A hardening has come upon Israel in part until the full number of the Gentiles comes in, and thus all Israel will be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come out of Zion. He will turn away godlessness from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. In respect to the gospel, they are enemies on your account. But in respect to election, they are beloved because of the patriarch. For the gifts and the call of God are irrevocable. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, the Lord will not abandon his people. Bless the man whom you instruct, O Lord, whom by your law you teach, giving him rest from evil days. The Lord will not abandon his people. For the Lord will not cast off his people, nor abandon his inheritance. But judgment shall again be with justice, and all the upright of heart shall follow it. The Lord will not abandon his people. Were not the Lord my help, my soul would soon dwell in the silent grave. When I say, my foot is slipping, your mercy, O Lord, sustains me. The Lord will not abandon his people.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
On a Sabbath, Jesus went to dine at the home of one of the leading Pharisees, and the people there were observing him carefully. He told a parable to those who had been invited, noticing how they were choosing the places of honor at the table. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not recline at table in the place of honor. A more distinguished guest than you may have been invited by him, and the host, who invited both of you, may approach you and say, "Give your place to this man." And then you would proceed with embarrassment to take the lowest place. Rather, when you are invited, go and take the lowest place, so that when the host comes to you, he may say, "My friend, move up to a higher position." Then you will enjoy the esteem of your companions at the table. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from Romans 11, 1 to 2a, 11 to 12, and 25 to 29. In this passage, Paul speaks again about the Jewish people. He identifies himself as being a Jew, that he's a child of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. It's interesting, one of the other people who was of the tribe of Benjamin was Jeremiah the prophet, who was called a prophet to the nations. Now, we don't know why Jeremiah was called prophet to the nations. Nations means the pagan people, and Jeremiah never had a mission to the pagans. Paul sees it as his responsibility to fulfill that call. In fact, he quotes Jeremiah when he says, "Before I was called, I was chosen by God." It's something Jeremiah says about himself. It's something that Paul says about himself in the letter to the Galatians. He saw the Jewish people who had been chosen by God, who had been given the covenant, reject the Messiah whom God had sent into their lives. And so it broke his heart. But then he says, this is all part of God's plan. Because by rejecting the Messiah, this allowed the pagan people to enter in. In a sense, it opened up a little bit of an opportunity. Now, when the full number of the pagans who are to be saved are saved, then maybe they'll make the Jewish people jealous and they'll embrace Jesus as Messiah also. God's ways are far beyond our ways of understanding. Therefore, instead of looking at this as an unmitigated disaster, maybe we should look at it as a mystery. In this sense, we see that God is the ultimate opportunist, using even rejection as an opportunity to save others. Wouldn't it be nice if we approached life that way? Everything that happens is an opportunity for grace. Even if we're rejected by others, maybe it's an opportunity to forgive them, to love them. The Gospel is from Luke 14, verse 1 and 7 to 11. Jesus is at a Pharisee's supper, and he tells a parable that when you go to a wedding banquet, instead of taking the place of honor, maybe you should take the most humble place. If you take the place of honor, somebody more important might show up and you'll be embarrassed. If you take a humble place, you might be asked to take a more important place. What is Jesus proposing? That we live a life of humility, a life of service, in which we don't consider ourselves to be the most important, but rather consider other people to be more important than ourselves. That we don't look for honors here on earth, but rather we look for opportunities to serve. That when we're at a soup kitchen, we don't consider ourselves to be superior to those whom we're serving, but rather we consider it an honor to serve them. That when we're called to a position of leadership, instead of viewing it as an opportunity to be more important than others, we view it as an opportunity to humble ourselves in their service. And may God bless us.